Starting. Quiet, everyone. Place on set. Lights, camera. Quiet on set. Quiet on set. Oh my god. Greetings, traveller. Stay a while and listen. Hello, my name is AJ Pickett. Nice to see you. You're with the Mighty Gluestick channel, and I'm proud to host this little show that me and Arthur Kidawa and Locrius the have put together for you, which we have called
Oh, hello, welcome. I'm Monster Master Arthur, and today we're going to be talking about shapeshifters. That's right, shape-shifting reptilians. We're going to be talking about the Shitali, or also known as the Shitaori, or also in various subcultures and hobbies out there known as Draconians. So let's get into a little bit of the history first about our shape-shifting reptilians. As far as written history as we know it today, we're going to be looking back at 1929 with author Robert E. Howard, the author of Conan the Barbarian. We see lizardmen and shape-shifting lizardmen there as well, which thereafter have been featured and depicted by various authors and writers out there as well. The shape-shifting reptilian more recent rise in popularity is largely due to David Icke and his book, Children of the Matrix. Where David Icke talks about these creatures as entities that are part of a small network that control this planet. Now, David Icke is considered a conspiracy theorist, or what I would like to call more of a taboo idealist. This concept of shape-shifting reptilians living among us was, yes, more popularized by David Icke, but it is not completely a new concept, as abductees have been mentioning such creatures for quite some time now, and also a lot of information about this has been gathered from a Zulu shaman named Credo Mutwa, whom David Icke has interviewed. And you can see more of that in various places all over the internet. This concept of reptilians running the world is very much linked to the storyline of the movie They Live. Either way, whether you're a sci-fi freak or if you're interested in this kind of stuff, check out They Live. Some find this theory very unrealistic and impossible, while others find it reasonable in the realm of possibility. Now, going deeper, we can see that this whole shape-shifting reptilian story is not new. It's not recent. We can see it in the histories of cultures, of ancient cultures all over the world. Going to ancient China, we have the Naga, a half-serpent and half-humanoid that is a very important character in its ancient legendary history. Even in Vietnam, we have the very odd couple of the Red Demon leader and the daughter of the Dragon Lord of the Sea, parenting 100 eggs, and out of those 100 eggs, 100 sons came out and went to lead the various parts of Vietnam. Your leaders came from eggs. Some also believe that the shape-shifting reptilians are an adaptation from the time of the dinosaurs. The Aztecs also have a very fascinating ancient story on this topic, and the topic of giants, which also appear all over the ancient cultures. They write of a dual god named Ometecutli. They write of Ometecutl or Ometecutli, a dual god, the ultimate god, that created 4 children, 4 lesser gods, one of which was Quetzalcoatl or Quetzalcoatli, the god of the East, which was a reptilian in form and somewhat, in my opinion, appeared quite similar to the Oriental dragon. And the Orients, the Asians, we refer to as the Eastern. Dragons of the East, god of the East. Interesting correlation there that I just connected actually right now. That was not pre-scripted. Let's keep going. Later, after some godly drama, this god, Quetzalcoatl, became the new sun, under which a new people were created on this planet. But they were corrupt and turned into monkeys by another god, after which Quetzalcoatl destroyed them with a hurricane. After more god battles and drama, and a huge major world flood, as we have heard of in other cultures, and a particular big book that has been very popular among humans, So after this huge flood created a new beginning, Quetzalcoatl went underground and got the bones of the dead to create a new people, the people which are still here today. Now, some people have connected this to the Bible, to the Great Flooding, and to the second people that went down underground during those times. Both stories sort of speak of a double race that was created on this planet. One that went underground, as spoken of in the Bible, and the other one which continued to survive on Noah's Ark and all that. And then Quetzalcoatl creating a new species of people out of the bones from the underground, which after then in the other book we read that God created people in its own appearance, and that was a reptilian god. So strange, weird connections here, just having some fun. And then you see Adam and Eve, yes, and very human as we know humans to look, form, and shape, chatting with the evil or the bad intentions of the snake, a reptile. Was it a snake, or was it actually a reptilian? Or was it a humanoid reptilian shapeshifted in snake form? Is this leading us to a possible and extremely ungraspable reality? Or has humanity been simply demonizing our cold-blooded animal friends out there since the beginning of time? Now again, this video is all about the shape-shifting reptiles, but keep in mind all those strange ancient drawings of weird things in the sky. In South America, huge pyramids found all over our planet, and Quetzalcoatl being described as a fiery snake in the sky. Enough of that. Alright, let's go into the appearance and all that good stuff about our reptilian friends today. Again, one of the most important things to note about today's monster is its shape-shifting ability, similar to that of werewolves, similar to that of were-jaguars, which were existent in South America in old legends, and also the were-tigers of Asia. So there's some similar beasts for you. Commonly, as of the more recent years, they are described as creatures that are 5 to 12 feet tall. They love drinking blood, and they come from Alpha Draconis. Now this is more according to abductees and the supporters of the conspiracy of the reptilians running the elites and the bloodlines of our world today. Did I say Alpha Draconis star system? That's what I meant, not star, but star system. And now they're in our underground bases, still ruling from the ancient days. Their colors can range from brown to yellow, kind of golds, possibly shiny since they're scaly. It could be a shiny-ish grayish color, which would be a silverish color, to greens and possibly going on to the reds. Silvery colors. Some have been described as being winged, some even horned, and compared to Darth Vader, and most commonly known for the slits in their eyes. Yes, those reptilian eyes with the slit going down. And that's why there's a lot of odd pictures and videos all over YouTube mentioning people's eyes shifting to these crazy looking eyes. The love for blood and stories of sacrifice surround these ancient creatures far into the legends that we can discover and that have been discovered. Many believe that they mix into the human race, creating hybrid creatures, and that you may even be an unknowing reptilian or half-blood. So look in the mirror and see if you can shapeshift your eyes. Is magic used by this race? Yes, it has been observed that magic has been used in this race in ritual format. We return to those ideas of sacrifice, ritualistic sacrifice, and blood drinking, and anything else connected to those types of events and, well, their ability to shapeshift. Alright, let's jump into the strengths and weaknesses of our draconian friends. Strengths: big, muscular, scale. That means they got natural armor. So when prepared correctly, a reptilian hide can make for some great and wonderful, strong but comfortable attire. Strong and deceptive with their ability to change form and be reclusive and ability to know how to play with your mind. Their weaknesses: the reptilian brain. Yes, as we talk about in psychology, the reptilian brain is more based off of instinctual knowledge and such behavior. That's how these reptilian creatures are described as mentally as well. So it seems that they are fully reptilian-minded, lacking the other parts of the brains that mammals would contain. Therefore, a weakness could be that they are instinct-driven, meaning they could be predictable and be forced into making mistakes. Lack of real deep creativity and emotional exploration, and apparently not having the ability to pronounce certain words. So figure out what those words are and go test out your friends. And lacking the ability to deny that they are a shape-shifting reptilian. That's right, so if you ask someone who is a shape-shifting reptilian whether they are, the only answers they can give you is yes they are, or they cannot answer it. If they say no they are not, then they are truly not. A true reptilian cannot deny their existence. Factions going to ufology and alienology out there. We got allies as some of the short gray aliens and possibly some of the tall gray aliens as they often are found working for them. And enemies, the Pleiadians, the Syrians, and the Anunnaki. Anunnaki seemingly being in competition to control the world with these reptilians, and the Syrians and Pleiadians more in support of humanity as we know it today. Alright, let's get into one of my favorite things, the power level. 1 being a cricket, 5 being a giant, and 10 being an ever-existent, ever-knowing celestial being. I would place the shape-shifting Chitauri lizard men or women shapeshifters into a level range of 3 to 4, depending on their size and strategy. Just like humans. Humans are hard to categorize into a simple number because of their range of intelligence, determination, and other things that can create great heroes or great villains out there. So I would have to say 3 like other humans, but 4 reaching higher strengths and with added war experience and knowledge, having the ability to battle things larger such as trolls and ogres, and maybe even going beyond that. In a battle strategy, I would say take advantage of their aggression, instinctual nature, and strategize around that to destroy the Draconian as fast as possible. As far as other sources containing shape-shifting Draconians, there are tons. They have been in comic books, Spider-Man, even lately in the movie, many other cartoons, stories, books, fairy tales, and games. So keep your eye out on those lizard people out there, because they are much more common than you may have noticed. If the adventurous, brave explorers would like to delve deeper into this topic out there, do let me know and I'll make a video of an all-about shape-shifting reptilians just for you. But until then, one question remains here, and that is whether the corpse of a shapeshifter remains in its illusional form, or does it change back into its original form after death and decay? This has been Monster Master Arthur, not signing out, but signing in. Let's see what the 3 of us, AJ Pickett, Locrius, and I, come up with. What monstrous, hideous creation will come of this presentation. Hope you have enjoyed the show so far, and hope you continue to enjoy it.
Give him a round of applause, everybody. Arthur Kidawa, that was amazing. Holy moly. What is going on, everybody? My name is Locrius, and I'm really excited to be here for the first ever episode of Masters of Monsters. Yeah! We got AJ Pickett in the house. We got Arthur Kidawa in the house. Those dudes know a lot about monsters. I don't know what the hell I'm doing here, but we're gonna have some fun irregardless, so we got a lot to cover. Let's get right in there. So what monster am I gonna cover? Straight from Expedition to the Barrier Peaks. That's right, you bastards, we're going back from the amazing module that brought you the Frog Hemoth. I present to you the Vegapygmy. Now, I don't want to go crazy giving all the details of Expedition to the Barrier Peaks, but if you want to see an amazing review of that module, there's a gentleman by the name of Davey Breon Jackson. If you search on YouTube for Bring Back the Magic, you'll find subscribe. He is like the Zen master of Dungeons & Dragons. I mean, how can you go wrong with this module? Just look at this cover by the incomparable Errol Otis. There's a fighter with a badass dragon helm who's thrown away his shield because he's like, I got a ray gun, bitches. I'm gonna shoot the Sarlacc pit. There's gonna be a couple spoilers, by the way. So it's, to my knowledge, it's the first D&D module that mashed together the fantasy genre with the sci-fi genre. The basic idea is a spaceship crashed in Greyhawk on the Barrier Peaks, and you're hired by a baron to go fight the throng of weird and strange creatures that have issued forth and rampaged the countryside. The Vegapygmy, if you haven't figured it out yet, is an anthropomorphic plant creature. It's a vegetable, but it moves and it eats meat. It's completely carnivorous. They have on the tips of their fingers, they have like sharp, thorn-like claws. They have leafy tendrils that grow from their body, particularly in a top knot on top of their head. It also grows in their forearms and their lower legs, their midriff, their armpits, and their back, making them look all hairy. They possess a very low intelligence, even by human standards, and that's saying something. They don't have a language proper, but they can communicate with guttural sounds and weird clicky stuff. So the Vegapygmy was created by Gary Gygax, the godfather of everything weird and awesome in Dungeons and Dragons. But I don't know if he designed the look of the Vegapygmy himself or if he left it up to Errol Otis or one of the other artists. It's also possible that it was one of his weird little toys that he used for miniatures. That's how we got the Boule and the Rust Monster and the Owlbear. And the Owlbear, I actually think, was originally a kappa from Japanese mythology that Gygax had that turned into a new creature, sort of going back and forth with Asian and American culture, like Bambi created anime in a weird old game of telephone creativity. But I digress. The module came out in 1980 also, which is right on the coattails of all those weird 70s sci-fi movies like Invasion of the Body Snatchers comes to mind. Very possible those things played an influence in the Vegapygmy design as well. So with their plant-like physiology, the Vegapygmies are basically immune to any kind of piercing damage, electricity, and since they don't have a normal sentient mind, they're completely immune to charm and enchantment effects. Vegapygmy society is basically a dumbed-down version of very basic, rudimentary human tribal society. They're ruled by a chief. There is a chief who's basically the biggest, toughest, tallest son of a bitch Vegapygmy that they got there. And there will be sub-chiefs and bodyguards, depending, basically ordered by how tall people are. It's a acrocracy, where the tall people rule. Acrocracy, if that's a thing. Michael Barker is our lord and master. All hail Barker. Now the Vegapygmy are completely genderless, which means that their reproduction takes place in a completely non-sexy manner. However, it's arguably the coolest part of Vegapygmy ecology. Now, I know we've been talking a lot about plant creature and plant dudes and plant life form, vegetable, Vegapygmy, but that may be a little bit of a misnomer. The Vegapygmy are also known as the Mold Men for a very good reason. Because a Vegapygmy is not born from a mama Vegapygmy, but from a horrible substance known as the russet mold. Sorry. Slimes, molds, and puddings. Oh man, is there anything more frightening than slimes, molds, and puddings? I don't know, man. How do you fight something without a face? How do you stab at something that doesn't have limbs? It just stretches out greasy tendrils at you, or just turns itself into a cube. The russet mold is incapable of locomotion. It doesn't have any tendrils that shoot out, and it doesn't have any physical attacks whatsoever. But it doesn't need them. It's got a natural camouflage, and it's going to take a really, really good perception check to notice that the russet mold is anything other than regularly occurring rust. Even though the russet mold can't move, it's really, really, really resilient. In fact, it's immune to just about every kind of damage. Regular weapons don't do anything. I don't even think magic weapons do anything to it. It's immune to fire, it's immune to cold. In fact, the only things that will kill it are acid, alcohol, salt, a cure disease spell cast on it, or a continual light spell cast on it. That'll kill it. Who's gonna think of that? I don't know. But if you do try to kill it, don't get close, because this thing is surrounded by an invisible cloud of spores that will kill your ass really quick. In first edition, it was 1 Constitution save. If not, you were gonna die in 2 to 5 turns. If you pass the save, you take like 5 to 20 damage. Now in later versions, I think they changed it to Constitution damage, which is probably a good move. In Pathfinder, I think it was 2d6 Constitution on your first failed save, and then you got another failed save, it's another 2d6, and that's gonna kill you too. I mean, it's harsh, but I mean, you gotta figure it's an alien substance. You ain't got no immunity to that. What the hell you thinking? But the most beautiful part is when a victim dies to the russet mold, it completely grows over them in like a weird-ass shiitake mushroom cocoon, and then 24 hours later, a veggie pygmy rips its way out like some beautiful freaking plant-based butterfly from another planet. The veggie pygmy are also known to cultivate a wide variety of different funguses for their nefarious purposes, most notably the shrieker fungus, which is a large toadstool that if you get too close to it, it emits this horrible ear-piercing scream and acts as an alarm system. You don't want to hear that. No way, they'll come running. I heard that. And no discussion about the veggie pygmy would be complete if we don't talk about the mold men's best friend. That's right. Just like the goblins and orcs have wargs and the vampires have their hounds of hell, so doth the veggie pygmy have the thornies. As you may have guessed, the thornies are the canine version of veggie pygmies. Less intelligent, more thorny. Probably just put in there to give a little bit of variety. However, I will say Pathfinder did something really cool. They made Thorny a template that you could apply to any animal. So you could have like a mammoth Thorny or Tyrannosaurus Rex Thorny. Alright, so we've talked about the origin, we've talked about their physiology and their ecology. Let's get in there and talk about the juiciest part about monsters, which is just simply how to use them in your story to really bring them to life, and just bring that session to life for your players. So whenever I'm coming up with an adventure, I try to pay extra special attention to the NPCs, because your non-player characters, they're really the voice of your world. They are the nexus through which your players get immersed in your storyline. So when you're coming up with an adventure with veggie pygmy, obviously they don't use language, they can't be communicated with like a normal NPC. So my recommendation to really bring them to life is to, when you're making an encounter with them, think zombie. Now when I say think zombies, I don't mean just your horde of mindless undead that are just there for cannon fodder, although veggie pygmy certainly can fill the cannon fodder role. But zombies used to be people, and veggie pygmy have grown out of the corpses of their victims, and I think that gives you an opportunity for some really cool storytelling. For example, the party comes across a tribe of veggie pygmy. It's the first veggie pygmy tribe they've ever come to, and there's a bunch of them, and a nasty Donnybrook ensues, and the players are scratched and battered and beat up, but they persevere. And the barbarian charges forward and deals the death blow to the veggie pygmy chief, just coming down with his gigantic maul and smashing his head like a melon, like you're in the front row of a Gallagher show. And just this deluge of green gore just sloughs on him and starts dripping down his breastplate. And as he looks down, he sees the glint of silver. And he reaches down, and from the gore, he pulls out the unmistakable holy symbol of a cleric that they met a couple adventures earlier. Oh man, you devious bastard! You've done it again! Or I could imagine in a steampunk type world, imagine that there's an ocean liner and it crashes into an iceberg. And there's a couple that will do anything to get together, and Celine Dion's I can't do it. Okay, but seriously, a big ass chunk of ice breaks off, and there's a Vegapygmy stuck inside, and it's this big scientific discovery, and I imagine the newspapers spinning, missing link discovered. But on the ship, there's a mad scientist type who's like, bring this thing to my quarters and I will inspect it. And he opens it up, and poof, a spore cloud comes out. And the Vegapygmy menace descends upon the ocean liner, which is weeks away from shore and surrounded by icy waters. Oh man, I get excited. Or what if there's a group of expansionist dwarves driven by the greed of their god Abathor, and they're digging everywhere they can, mining incessantly for iron and for coal so that they may make steel, so that they can make bigger and more powerful machines, so that they can continue to mine. And they've hollowed out their entire mountain. They've bled it dry, so they begin to dig straight down into the Underdark, where they start to destroy the fragile ecosystem down there. And unfortunately, and unbeknownst to them, they draw the ire of a secret Underdark druid circle of Svirfneblin gnomes. Say that 10 times fast. Svirfneblin. This ancient order vows to get revenge on those meddlesome dwarves, so they launch a stealth mission, and in the dead of night, or whenever the dwarves sleep, because it's underground, whenever that is, they flutter in riding on giant bats, floating in on black wings like shadows into the dwarven kingdom, and on their machines of digging, they smear a mysterious substance gingerly that looks suspiciously like rust. But of course it's the russet mold. In fact, maybe they go to the High King's Iron Throne itself and smear it on there. And the next day, when he emerges with his subjects and sees that there's rust on his throne, erg, he pulls a Gaelic accent out of his arse and begins to wipe it off, and poof. Oh no, it's on now! Vegapygmy dwarves, motherfucker! So I hope this gives you some ideas for how to use this weird-ass monster in your campaign. Now, it is with the utmost pleasure that I pass the mic to the illustrious AJ Pickett. He is gonna blow your minds, I know that for a fact. Take it away, AJ!
At last, that time is here, the quickening. Brigade Con 2015. Hello everybody, I'm AJ, the mighty Gluestick. Very nice to see ya. I am very honoured to be joined with Arthur and Locrius on this little show that we've put together called The Masters of Monsters. And it's my job in this little segment here, following up on those two wonderful presentations, to bring together those two monsters that they were talking about. The Vegapygmy of Locrius and the shape-shifting reptilians of Arthur's presentation. And so my job is to bring them two together and create an entirely new monster for 5th edition play for D&D. Or you can use this concept for various other game systems. It's pretty easy to adapt. But I've got a character sheet or a monster sheet that I'm going to be posting for you, as well as some little tips on how to create tiny weeny little miniatures and a simple little photo montage after this presentation is finished. So the creature that I have created is called the Rotling. Now the Rotling is a demonic perversion of the Vegapygmy, much like the gnolls are a perversion of hyenas by the demon lord Yenogu. When he actually stepped foot on the material plane and corrupted a pack of hyenas following and eating his victims, they were mutated mystically and turned into the demon-driven, horrific gnoll raiders. So the Vegapygmy is a corruption of the sort of fungal, humanoid Vegapygmy's nature. So Vegapygmy's created from brown mold, which was one of the very first creatures. They're one of the very first creatures that ever came to be in D&D. Brown mold has been around since the very first Adventures of Dungeons and Dragons, and Veggie Pygmies are a direct creation of Gary Gygax. So the Rotling is a continuation and an update for 5th edition, and it's very much a story element that you can throw into your campaign to freak out your players, because I love monsters that are truly mysterious and horrific, and you can have a lot of fun with the Rotling. So, enough preamble, let's get to what it actually is. So I've created a little miniature here. So here's my standard issue miniature here to give you a humanoid scale. And here is a Rotling. Tiny, isn't it? Yeah, it's the size of it's a tiny baby-sized thing. And I'll show you how to actually create this. It's amazingly easy in a little photo montage directly after the show. Yeah, so what the Veggie Pygmy is it's a fungal human flesh parasite amalgam. And it takes the form of a tiny weeny little rotty baby. It's got lidless eyes of pearly white. It's got needle-like fangs and a little more. It's got quite hulky, strong upper body strength that's capable of breaking open a human's jaw. And I'll get to why I can do that in a minute. So it's got an armor class of 13, natural sort of woody armor, and it's also very small and hard to hit. It's quite fast, moves at 30 feet per round, and it can do so by dropping down on all fours and running like a cat or a dog. It's got 8 hit points, 2d6 plus 1, so it's quite weak and very small. So one decent hit will kill this thing. Also, it's vulnerable to cold damage, much like a brown mold. Cold damage or a critical from cold will kill it instantly, and cold damages will wipe them out very quickly. However, much like the brown mold from 1st edition, the Veggie Pygmy, the Rotling multiplies in heat. They feed upon heat, and it's really the focus of the entire creature is heat and warmth. So their ultimate goal is to go after those who use flame or create flame and multiply. However, they're very vulnerable and restricted in some ways, but very powerful in others. So you may want to place a restriction on their multiplication that a Rotling can only do this once a day, multiply and split in two if exposed to heat or attacked by fire or heat. It can split in two once. So call that like a daily ability from 4th edition. Or you could have it on a roll of 6 on a 6-sided dice. If it's in fire, it can replicate and multiply, but otherwise it's pretty much immune to fire and heat attacks. They basically just feed it and make it grow. So they are also resistant to poison and necrotic attacks, because poison and necrosis are kind of in their nature, so they're resistant to that because they just sort of shrug it off. It's kind of what they are. They have pretty simple statistics. Their strength is a surprising 10 for something their size, mainly upper body strength. They can't really carry anything per se, but they are capable of, as I mentioned, wrenching open somebody's jaws. And yeah, dexterity is 12. They're nimble like a little cat or a dog. Constitution is a surprising 16. So they are quite capable of carrying on for hours and hours, because they are powered by heat and not really food per se. So they have a different constitution, a different physiology to a humanoid. They have an intelligence, a surprising cunning intelligence of 13 and a wisdom of 11. So they're capable of surprisingly clever tactics, and I'll get to those in a minute. And they've got an intimidating charisma of 12. So yeah, not exactly great conversationalists. They don't even speak common per se most of the time. They don't really need to, but they are capable of conversing in common or learning other languages. So let's get to what their special abilities are. They are tiny in size, baby-sized, like newborn infant-sized. They are attracted to fire and heat, and they have a unique ability which is parasitic in nature. Now, those of you who are squeamish, this is really not the show for you. So, yeah, fair warning, this is going to get kind of grisly. What the Rotling does, and you can kind of tell by its name, is it mutates and transforms victim through rotting spores that transform the lungs of its victims into a kind of like a placental sac that the rotling can climb inside of, link up to with its fungal nature, and drive that body like a machine, like a vehicle, completely taking it over. Yeah, horrific, isn't it? So their parasite nature is the rotling is able to inhabit the body of those who are victims of its rotting spores. It can use an action to enter the mouth of a medium or large creature, medium, large, or huge, but not small. So gnomes and other creatures of tiny size, forget about it. The rotling just can't fit into your lung capacity. It just can't do it. So they're not much use. The small size creatures are not much use to a rotling, so rotlings won't target those communities. It's good news if you're a halfling, I suppose. Once they crawl inside, they're able to assume complete control, and the rotling gains all the physical traits of that body, but none of the skills or knowledge. That also includes the ability to use an Aarakocra's wings for flight, for instance. They may be able to glide because they can sort of muscle it out, but they haven't learned how to fly, so they can't just fly. They haven't learned how to use a breath weapon, so they can't do that. They haven't learned how to use a paralyzing effect or something like that. So if you have special abilities of that humanoid or creature that require knowledge to use, the rotling can't do it. But they do have, while they're inside there, the protection of that full physical force and form of that creature. So it's strength, it's weapons, that sort of thing it can use. It can't use complicated things like bows, or it can use simple weapons, bludgeoning, stabbing, or piercing weapons, no problem. But it can't use something that's complicated as a large crossbow. It's never learned how, it doesn't need to. So, the victims of its rotting spores. What are the rotting spores? So, the rotling is capable of breathing out a cloud of these spores. It's a 15-foot cone that it can breathe out through the mouth of its victim. So, once it's crawled inside a victim, and it can sort of poke its head out of the mouth, which you'll see a picture of that in a second. It's quite horrible. And it can breathe these spores out. Or it can briefly exit a living body, climb up onto a thatched roof, dig through and breathe the spores into a crowded tap room in a tavern or something like that, which is quite likely, considering that's where the biggest, strongest members of the humanoid community may possibly be located. It's very low risk to itself, and it would have the most devastating effect if it could then drop down and inhabit one of the transformed people. So, yeah, it's a transformative effect. So, targets caught in the cloud must make an immediate saving throw or take 7 points of necrotic damage, or save for half, and they're immune to the effect. Those who take the full damage and have failed the saving throw must make a DC 12 Constitution saving throw, or if they've breathed in a lung full of the stuff, right? And on a failed save, the spores will poison the target. So they've taken the full damage, they've breathed in a lungful of stuff, they're taking full damage because it is and it's poisoned them, so they've got disadvantage on all saving throws. Oh, sorry, all ability checks and physical attack rolls. So they're sickened, and yeah, they can play this up however they like, because what's happening is the spores have taken hold in their lungs, and they have germinated, and they are physically forcing the tissue to reform. They're taking it over and just digesting it and turning it into this placental sac. And so it's a horrible process. So the target then must make another DC 12 Constitution saving throw at the start of the next round, or just fall unconscious, because it's taken over your ability to breathe, and it's massively painful. If they make the saving throw, they still take another 7 or 2d6 necrotic damage and cough up the spores and chunks of the transformed tissue, and they fought it off and managed to actually vacate it out of their lungs. But you know, it's a horrible process, and it's a lucky save. Those who have fallen unconscious then start to transform in full, and they take 14 points or 46 points of necrotic damage per round, unless they get immediate magical healing. They will die from this, and well, kind of die. When they drop to 0 hit points, if they haven't had magical intervention, they then are transformed into a vessel, a rotted out vessel that the rotling can inhabit. They're not dead, they're just in kind of a walking coma. They're completely subsumed, they're basically unconscious, they're completely unaware of what's going on around them. Their nervous system has been taken over by the fungus. The fungus is also providing all oxygen for their body because their lungs are gone. And the rotling can then break open the jaw and crawl physically inside the victim. So one of the easy ways to tell that somebody has been transformed by a rotling is there will be a seeping of blood around the eyes, nose, and mouth from this horrible wrenching attack. And also lots of physical characteristics such as a lurching sort of gait because the rotling hasn't really gotten used to their body. They can't speak, and they will not recognize anybody or have any sort of facial recognition. The muscles of their face slack. However, the rotling is clever enough to put a hood over, hunch over, and just move with a crowd, so it can easily infiltrate human settlements and stuff as they come in with the morning markets or something like that. So the vessel, the body, the only real hope for the vessel now, if the rotling has been extracted somehow or has left the body, it can be restored with potent transformative, restorative, magical healing. So a restoration, greater restoration will reform the lungs, purge the body of the damaging fungus, and return them back to normal. But that's about it. So if you failed all those saving throws, it can be a deadly attack, definitely. But of course, there's that hope of keeping that body alive and not damaging the rotling, or not damaging the body that the rotling is in, with the hope that the rotling will exit at some point and you can save that body or that person. Also, there's all sorts of opportunities for the role-playing and story and narrative aspects of this, because the person could be somebody you know. It could be a family member, it could be a noble, it could be the town captain or something like that. Somebody who can just walk around without talking and point and things will happen. The rotling is a clever beast, and they will put themselves in a body that people are loath to harm. It could be a holy leader, a religious leader or something like that. They could attack those who they know are capable of magical healing, therefore giving them a better chance of overtaking and destroying an entire community. They are evil, and their objective is to take over the world, basically destroy humanoids, and use them as breeding fodder and vessels that they can move around in. For them, they need to be in the warmth of a humanoid body. It's where they feel most comfortable, and they can stay in there indefinitely. So yeah, it's ensconced in their little placental sac inside the chest of a mindless slave. So that's what they tend to do. They will infiltrate a humanoid settlement, but they are quite capable of coming in livestock. So they can do this to a cow or a horse. Very easy to infiltrate if you're a horse. Horses don't really need to, you don't really need to fool others into your intelligence or your former identity if you're a horse or a cow or a goat or a donkey or something like that. Goats can be fairly big. Yeah, a goat could work. So yeah, they could come in as a pack animal, and you'd think, there might be something wrong with my horse here. It's got a bit of blood around its eyes and nose, but other than that, the horse can sort of and manage to fool you into not knowing that this thing has got a horrible parasitic being inside it. And once you're in the settlement or town or through the fort or past the huge castle walls, that's when the rotling can sneak out in the nighttime and use its spore breath and invade, replicate in fires and hearths all over the town. And within a few days, you could have a rotling infestation, which is devastating. So yeah, physically not very powerful. Story-wise and their tactics make them extremely dangerous. And they're the sort of things that, demonic influence on the world where they just want to tear everything down. The rotling is a perfect expression of that. It's a small, weak creature, which is horrific. It targets loved ones and families. They can't affect babies and children. So you may enter a community where all of the adults have been transformed and all of the babies and children have been left wandering around, bereft and forlorn, malnourished and terrified of the humanoids who their parents have become these horrific zombie-like beings. you may actually be approached by children out in the wilderness who have wandered away from their settlement and community, desperate for help because there's something terribly wrong. Their parents have been possessed by demons, and then when you turn up, all ready for a supernatural fight, you discover that rotlings are actually the cause of it, and there's like nothing you've ever encountered before in your life, and next thing you know, you're being shot at by all these paralyzing horrible spores that transform your lungs, and yeah, it's a deadly encounter. So rotlings, hope you enjoyed that. I'm going to be posting up a picture of the sheet that I've made for these things. You can modify it as you will. It's free to use in your campaign wherever you feel like it, and unusual for me in that I make a new creature for 5th edition, but there you go. I'm usually one that sticks to the rule books. Also, a little tutorial photo montage of how I made those tiny miniatures. Enjoy, and on with the show. Alright, it's time for a montage. Okay, so here's the Rotling. Nice little bit of artwork here showing this horrific beastie. Here's a basic monster sheet showing all the information that you may need. If you want to print that out from a screen capture, go for it. But I basically covered all the info in the presentation. Okay, so take a piece of Sculpey, just a little piece like this, press into it a little baby-sized figure like that, bake it in the oven at 175 degrees Fahrenheit for about 10 minutes. Take some 2-part epoxy, mix it together, press it into the impression like that, peel it off with your fingernail, there you go. Then let that set, carve it off with a craft knife. You can do a lot of these really quickly. Here's just some scale and a little bit of detail. Stick them on there. I applied a little bit of super glue for extra strength, and then paint them up, and there you go, all done. The tiny Rotling. Can you see? Hang on, magnifying glass. Can you see? No. It's pretty. This one's got really pretty eyes. Okay, next up we have the question and answer segment of the show. Starting off with Arthur. I have a question for you. You focus a lot on creatures mythology and monster movies and popular cinema and mythological creatures. Here's a D&D question for you though, or just a classic role-playing question. What monster would you choose, or even what monsters would you choose to throw against a first level party of adventurers? Preferably avoiding any of the sort of really common ones. But what's your take on an interesting encounter for a first level group of characters in a D&D game? Take it away, man.
Alrighty, that's a great question, AJ, and it's not a hard question, but it's a question that's difficult to answer in a short way or with one single answer, one single monster. So I'm going to give you guys 3 monsters that I think are great. So the best monster to throw at a level 1 party of characters. That's right, of heroes. So I'm going to talk to you about 3. The first one, in brief, I wanted to mention is the kobold. I don't know, I just had the kobolds in mind. Kobolds. Kobold. I kind of like kobold. How do you say it? So, I was sort of debating adding them to this list as they are commonly used for low-level characters, but they have a large variety to them. And I'm not just talking about in the D&D world, because in the D&D world, kobolds are sort of reptilian. But then when you look at games and different games, and, for example, EverQuest 1, I remember beating up and killing kobolds, and they had this hyena kind of Wolverine-esque, from the weasel family of creatures, more kind of animalistic, primitive body shape, more like a creature hunched over, but they were kind of small, like maybe a foot, 2 feet tall, and those were pretty cool. I was thinking that'd be awesome just to have that as a pet. So yeah, but then looking into human history and legends, the kobold has a totally different appearance, and it's seen as a sort of spirit. And when you look at the old images and surrounding the older stories of the kobold, it has more of this goblin-esque or gremlin sort of look to it, with the pointy long nose and ears, kind of fey type of appearance to it, although of course it's quite a malevolent creature. So because of all this variety we have all over the place with the kobold, I think it's easy and it's fair enough, it's logical to be able to create your own kobolds and subspecies of kobolds with different sorts of hides and scales and skins to them, and sizes even, since we see kobolds from this kind of more animalistic figure shape to them, to this more bipedal appearance to it, such as in D&D, or as I've mentioned with the legendary history of it. So that gives us a lot of room to play with, from mammal-esque with fur to totally reptilian and cold-blooded, such as the ones in D&D. So I think that leaves you a lot of space to create your own kobolds and your own subspecies of kobolds to introduce into the game and give your heroes a little bit of fun with. It definitely beats goblins and bugs for me for the most part, as those are so largely used, and other smaller animals that you will put in the games and that you see in games that, you know, beginner characters fight. Next, I want to talk about demons. That'll be my number 2. My second answer to this question is demons, and I have to talk about demons because I was thinking of something which has a high population. If you got characters, you know, like when you play an MMO or something, you're always going out and you're killing a lot of stuff, and you're usually dealing with pests. So when I was thinking of some kind of pest creature, I had a few creatures in mind, but then I was like, you know, I want more variety to them. I don't want every one of them to just look green, or every one of them look like a giant beetle or bee or something. I wanted something where each one can have more variety, and demons equal variety. There's so many kinds, and they are just that representation of a pest, you know. The small demons, I mean, demons can be huge and to high levels, but there are those small, low-level demons, and I'll give you some examples at the end of this little review and introduction or discussion of them. So I picked them because they reminded me, again, of invasive species such as we have in this reality, where we have the cane toad that was introduced to Australia, or the Burmese python, or wild pigs that are introduced from other countries into a different country, and then can create quite a bit of destruction in the ecological system of that region. So I think demons are those kind of creatures. Maybe they follow a particular hero that did a wrong thing or lied or something, and there was a demon present or that kind of spirit, so it followed them into a new region, a new village, or a farm or something, and then it just started duplicating. In whatever manner you think demons duplicate. Are we talking about breeding, such as other creatures, or through other methods, such as fire and chemical reactions out there with their attitudes, or breeding directed mentality? Like, for example, there's a lot of demons that are elemental based, so maybe they need some ice or fire or certain specific things in their environment to breed into. Maybe it's not just the opposite sex, maybe it's specific elements and things like that. And like I said, a kind of chemical reaction. Plus, there's summoning as well. So you're going to have like demon bosses and lords that can come by and start summoning more. Of course, depending on the environment, it could add to how many will be summoned. And so that just, it seems like it's a race, it's a creature type, it's a monster type that has the ability to really reproduce fast. And that's what I was looking for, because level 1 characters, they need to battle through a lot of stuff. So demons seem like it would be a great creature to introduce in high numbers, small sizes, but a lot of cool little creations. So let's jump into some species, could we call them species? Sure, why not? There's some types of these demons that I'm talking about. So first we got the Chasme. The Chasme, I like to say Chasme, but it's probably Chasme or Chasm, maybe. But yeah, take a look at that one. Then we got the Dretch. Then we got the Mains, the Quasit, and many more in the D&D world and outside. Remember, you look at Japan. There's so many monsters in Japan, but how many demons come from Japan lore and history? It's like every monster that doesn't have a specific name, it's just called a demon. So I think a demon is another word for a monster that hasn't been sort of classified. Sometimes heroes or demonologists or monster researchers, maybe they find some new monster, creature, really strange. They don't have a name for it, they just call it demon, because it's so easy just to place that name on a monster. But maybe some of these demons are miscategorized, so just something to think about. Alright, let's go to creature number 3, and I've been thinking about this one, and at the end I realized how powerful it is. So, I'm speaking about the Formian Queen. Formian Queen, check that out. Basically, I'm not saying introduce this specific creature to the game, but something lesser, but in comparison to this, with the similar natures. So I'm talking about a huge, like, insect queen that, you know, works with the hive mind and controls all the other creatures out there, you know, like Tyranids, but we're going much, much smaller in scale. And I thought this would be a great little introduction for a level 1 group, because first they gotta battle through tons of insects. And when we talk about bugs and insects in D&D and whatever else, you know, in the fantasy world, we're talking bugs like this. We're disgusted by little cockroaches this big. That's not so little, but for heroes, it is. That's pretty small. And centipedes. Ooh, giant centipedes. Well, imagine a 2-foot centipede or cockroach that's, you know, crawling up your leg that weighs as much as your puppy. Puppy, that's small. That's as much as your bulldog, you know. Something like that. And then big grotesque worms and ugly grubs and stuff like that. Battling through that is going to really test the heroes, I think. And in this reality, when you think of the most scary, disgusting things, people always talk about spiders. I consider centipedes pretty threatening just because of their nature. Their eyesight's weak, so they depend on their antennae, and you can't really predict their nature because of that. Then there's the undead. So that's another good one to test your heroes with. The undead can be introduced, I think, level 1, maybe level 2. But insects, let's get those in there, and we'll, you know, find out who's the weakling in the group. And once we battle through all those insects in that cave, in those tunnels, and we've made it through, we battled with brawn, now it's time to test our teamwork, more of our brawn, and our psychology, our mind battling ways. Not just psychology, I mean our magical ways too. So we put those other characters really to use now, not just blasting things, but dealing with something more intelligent. And that's where this Formian Queen concept comes in, because it's that hive, you know, queen. It keeps producing eggs and it's immobile. So that's great, because now these level 1 characters are dealing with a powerful creature, but it's immobile, or it's very slow. So that'll give them time to regroup, think of another strategy to attack it with, and plan that out and execute it. Then again, it also has the intelligence, it has the hive mind, that it has psyche attacks and different things like that, and can manipulate the characters possibly. So I'm not really talking about the Formian Queen specifically. She's a bit too powerful for level 1, way too powerful. But I'm talking about that concept. And we see that concept already a lot in movies, and it made me kind of rethink if I want to introduce this. But I say yeah, because it just gives your team a great first boss, possibly, to kind of surround and use a strategy and really see and cooperate together, use that teamwork together to destroy something that's not going to keep interrupting them and breaking them apart. At level 1, we need to start getting to know each other and working together, and I think that's that first test to see, are they going to make it through? Who's going to, you know, jump out of the group and go on their own? It's too powerful to sort of handle by themselves, so it's really going to depend on that. And again, the babies serve as the babies, the small insects. Maybe it's a variety of insects that it produces, you know, maybe it's not just one type. So all those creatures, those babies, will create awesome foes and monsters for the level 1s to battle through first, where they can repeat. But it makes sense why they repeat, because eventually we get to the source. So it doesn't just become monotonous with all this whole land surrounded with these one creature. It's because there's a queen out somewhere and, you know, just tests all levels and sides of your heroes. All right, and the last one I want to talk about... Oh, I'm done. That's it. Those 3. So I talked to you guys about kobolds, demons, and finally something of that insectoid queen type, such as the Formian Queen. Last but not least, I want to leave you with some awesome images of some honorable mentions of level 1s and about level 2s, because of course, you know, a good group can beat up a level 2, maybe even a couple heroes. So here you are. We've got the Azer, pretty cool creature of the fire realms. We got the Magmin, ooh, another one. And Modrons, so awesome. Imagine your hero stumbling into an old study where everything's alive, where it seems alive, where it's undead. Or it's just electric, whatever it is. It's magic. So, but imagine that. That would wake your heroes up. It would keep them alert the rest of the adventure. What a great test to just, wake up the mentality and make heroes realize they're a freaking hero. Nothing's normal in their life now. It's not going into a study anymore, picking up a book. You don't know if this book's going to try to bite your arm off or if there's some entity watching out for you. This is the life of a hero, and that's what you've entered. And if you pass through these first courses in level 1, you've made it to the level 2. You haven't made it to the big guns yet. So you've made it to level 2, but maybe by this time you should know if you're really cut out for this line of work. Even if it doesn't pay much, it's all about the passion. It's all about the passion, baby. Alright, continuing, we got the Nothic, then we got the, check that out, Quagoth, and then the Ettercap, the Flumph, and the Docenus. Oh, and don't forget, I had to just add this one, and I mean, we got dire and large insects and all that, and giant spiders, but giant fleas. That's right, giant fleas. Ooh, that's an interesting one. So, hope you guys, hope this answer was to your satisfaction. Thank you, AJ, for the question. And Locrius, it's your turn. My question to you is, if you had to choose some kind of monster to make playable as a character, not some humanoid or elvish, I'm talking some monster, which monster would you choose to make a playable character?
Oh man, what monster would I pick as a player race? That's like the best question ever. Oh my god. Part of me wants to go Darrow. Those madmen, the worst parts of gnomes and dwarves all wrapped up into a horrible little ball of murder. But I can't do that. They got the racial madness, and I mean, unless you want to play in a party with a Kenda on acid, I don't want to do that to anybody. So the monster that I would pick to turn into a player race would be the Bugbear. Yes, I love him. I love him. That was a double judo chop. That's a lot of love. Bugbears are amazing. If you're not using bugbears in your game, start now. Put them in your game. I feel like they're underused, and I don't know why. They have the physical stature and intimidating prowess of an orc, but the cunning of a goblin. Now, physiologically, bugbears are large goblinoids, but while a normal goblin's about 3 feet tall, bugbears are 7 feet tall. And plus they got those ears that go sideways like beast. They're just badass, man. Bugbears are awesome. Put them in your game. So what I really, really love about bugbears, and what I think will make them an awesome and unique player race, is the fact that they are a strong race. They're like a powerful race, as in orcs are a powerful race. The Goliaths, the mountain dwarves, these are strong, big, muscular races. But the bugbears have this awesome juxtaposition of the fact that they are also very, very stealthy. I love this question so much, and I love the bugbear so much, that I statted them out for you. You could put them in your game tomorrow. Go ahead and do it. I haven't play tested it. I don't know if it's 100% balanced, but it should be pretty close, I think. Alright, so let's go through the breakdown. Ability scores. We have a +2 to strength and a +1 to dexterity. Because they're strong, they're also quick and stealthy. Size. Your size is medium. Average height for a bugbear is 7 feet tall. Yeah, they're big, they're intimidating, they're tall and towering. Speed. Your base walking speed is 30 feet. I was thinking about doing 35, but I didn't want to step on the wood elf's toes. Languages. You can speak, read, and write Common and Goblin. Dark vision. Of course, bugbears have dark vision 60 feet. They live underground and prowl the shadows. It makes sense for them to have it. Master of Shadows. You're proficient in the stealth skill. I just wanted to call it something badass like Master of Shadows. Highwayman's Resolve. Alright, now we're getting in there. Bugbears are masters of hit and run tactics. If you're hidden from your enemies, you may use your bonus action to regain 1d12 plus your constitution modifier hit points. You may use this ability once per short rest. So this plays into the fact that they're brutal warriors, but they're also skirmishers, masters of ambushing. No chains can hold you! You have advantage on saving throws to avoid being frightened, paralyzed, or stunned. So I thought that this played into the big brutish stealthy guy a lot, so that they're not scared off, but also so that they're not pinned down. Brutal skullduggery! When you strike a surprise creature during the first round of combat, you may add the effect of the menacing attack, disarming attack, or trip attack battle master maneuver. This strike does not cause any extra damage. Okay, so the idea is bugbears are masters of ambushes and dirty tactics. They're skirmishers, they're awesome, brutal fighters. I didn't want to give them any extra damage to the first attack because I didn't want to break, basically I just didn't want to break the rogue assassin archetype to give another damage die. I felt like it would just get too crazy too quick, and I didn't want the bugbear to be the obvious best choice, the only good choice for assassin, or the optimum choice for the assassin archetype. The save DC is the same as a battle master. You choose strength or dexterity. I only limited it to once per turn. Now again, it's not play tested. I don't know if it's broken or not. You can change it to once per short rest if it seems like it's too much. Yeah, just do that, that's fine too. And finally we have weapon training. You're proficient with morning stars, javelins, and light armor. In addition, when wielding a morning star or javelin, you may treat it as having the finesse quality. Now I did this simply because bugbears are known for horrific ambushes with morning stars and javelins. It's the archetypical weapon for bugbears, and I just feel they need to be able to sneak attack with them. Alright, so there's the Locrius version of the bugbear. I hope you like it. If you use it in a game, let me know. I would really be interested to know how it plays out. Thank you so much, Arthur, for that question. That was awesome. I had a lot of fun with it. I actually have a question for the illustrious AJ Pickett. Alright, AJ, my question to you is, what is your favorite trick monster? Now when I say trick monster, I mean a monster that requires a certain mechanic to defeat. As in, you need to use fire to defeat a troll or a hydra, or healing magic to defeat a nilbug. AJ, what is your favorite trick monster?
Thank you, Locrius. That's a damn good question. Okay, well, in 5th edition, I would have to say that my favorite creature with a trick weakness is the I always have trouble saying this, Rakshasa. The Rakshasa, those sort of lion-faced, backwards hands demons that walk around on the mortal plane. Now they've got an interesting weakness, which is only magical piercing weapons wielded by good aligned creatures, good aligned beings, are they vulnerable? They're highly vulnerable to, so they have double damage from those sort of weapons, which has got a really amazing story element to it, and it reminds me of the Omen movie where Damien gets killed by his father with these special blessed daggers. They're the only thing that can kill his body and his soul. So I imagine there's something like that intended with that sort of idea. But yeah, a good creature wielding a magical item of piercing, so a dagger into a Rakshasa, and they get killed extra quick. But yeah, so that's my favorite pick from 5th edition. But really, it's very slim pickings. There's not a lot of obvious vulnerabilities in the 5th edition monsters, and I'll tell you why. That's because of the bounded accuracy thing that they've sort of built into it. In order to nip in the bud the idea of power creep, or having creatures which are too weak or too strong in the game, and having it so that every creature at every level of the game has a place or can be a viable combat tactic to throw at your players. So no player character is ever going to be completely immune to a lower level creature. So sufficient numbers of kobolds can take out a level 18 or 19 character. and sufficient numbers of town guards can take out a red dragon that's assaulting the city. Basically, yeah, there's nothing unattainable. So yeah, that being said, vampires are the ones with the most amount of damage stuff in there, because they have all these amazing abilities, and they're one of the more complicated creatures to run. But I think it's because of our familiarity with popular culture and the mythology of vampires that everybody is both highly fearful of vampires coming across them in the game, and also more able to run them because they know more of their special abilities, particularly those who have watched old like Hammer horror picture films and things like that. So vampires are vulnerable to running water, silver, holy weapons. They can only enter a building if they're invited. They're vulnerable to wooden stakes and sunlight. Lots of other creatures have difficulty with sunlight too. It's one of the more common things which can hamper. Not very many of them are actually hurt by sunlight. Myconids can be killed by sunlight. But kobolds and Katoa and drow and Duergar, driders, shadow dragons, cloakers, spectres, troglodytes and wraiths are all disadvantaged by sunlight. Kobolds and Katoas and stuff, because they are underground creatures usually, and their eyesight is just not adapted to the bright light of sunlight. Some of the undead creatures, obviously, sunlight is radiant sort of energy and they don't like it. And vampires, of course, deadly allergic to sunlight. It will kill them. Probably the weakest attack that you can throw against all the different creatures, or the creatures that have got the most resistance to a specific attack, would be poison. So poison is quite often useless against supernatural creatures or aberrant monsters, things like that, because their physiology just doesn't, they can shrug it off. And that's fairly typical in the real world too. A lot of poisons don't affect some creatures. Some creatures can eat things which will kill a human being, and vice versa. Some things that a human being will eat will kill something else. For instance, chocolate and dogs don't get on. As far as the rest of them, okay, so twig blights are vulnerable to fire because they're made out of dry wood. Animated armor is animated by magic, so anti-magic effects and dispelling can kill an animated armor, or a sword, or a flying carpet. Basilisks and medusas are vulnerable to their own stony gaze. Medusas because they are cursed, and basilisks because they're too stupid to realize that the reflection in a mirror is not a rival. Flumps are vulnerable to psychic attack and also being flipped upside down. Flesh golems, of course, Frankenstein, they're vulnerable to fire, or they're scared of fire, or they run away from fire, as do yetis. Hooked horrors, with the sunlight thing, they rely very much on their sense of hearing, and so they're vulnerable to being deafened. So thunder attacks would be devastating against hooked horrors, and would render them almost blind. Lycanthropes, of course, silver. Mummies are vulnerable, very famously, to fire. They're not vulnerable. Oh, yes, they are vulnerable. Some of the other ones just basically they don't like it. Salamanders, of course, are vulnerable to cold because they're creatures of fire. Scarecrows, made out of straw, so they're vulnerable to fire. Shadow beasts, radiant energy. Skeletons, vulnerable to bludgeoning damage because they're made out of brittle bone. And trolls, of course, famously vulnerable to acid and flame attacks, which will render their regeneration useless. It will switch it off because it basically cauterizes the flesh, which makes it very difficult for it to regenerate over the scab, the burnt off bit. Now, that being said, I would always encourage players to investigate things which they find threatening. So if I were going into a gnarly situation and I knew there was some sort of danger or beast or something in a location, I would hit Google in a flash and try and look up any information I could as to what I'm facing. You know, I wouldn't go into a disease-ridden area without learning as much as I could about the disease before I go in there to protect myself. And similarly, characters in a D&D or fantasy world, any sort of setting, but particularly 5th edition, would arm themselves with knowledge about that monster or creature. And of course, in a fantasy world, books and things aren't that common. I mean, they're all handwritten, and sages and things basically sell their knowledge or pass on their knowledge guardedly. It's sort of, fantasy worlds are kind of based on a pseudo medieval dark age sort of technology level, so lots and lots of printed books and libraries and things would not be that common. That's why you have sages and seers and diviners and things like that. And alchemists would know a bit about monsters as well, because they need special components from creatures. It's very common to collect parts of animals. Chinese medicine is famous for it. So if the players are taking the time in the game to investigate the monster before they go in there, it sort of indicates to me that the players are engaged with the situation. They are feeling a fear because they care about what the characters do, and they care about the mortality of the characters, and they feel anxiety about the fact that they're going up against some big bad monster. And so if you find yourself with a creature in the book which doesn't have a vulnerability that's listed there, give it one. For instance, if they're going up against a doppelganger and they go to a local seer, and the seer just happens to have knowledge, second-hand knowledge from a colony of elves that lived 100 years ago, and in a certain song that they wrote, it mentioned in passing that at a banquet the doppelganger was revealed by eating very salty meat, and it turns out the salt was damaging to them and revealed their presence because it went "Wah!" and it dropped its guys momentarily. That's perfectly fine, and really engages the players because they feel a sense of accomplishment. They've got an edge, even if they're not entirely sure that that edge is real. It may just be anecdotal and not accurate, but it gives them more confidence to go into that situation armed with bags of salt. And yeah, you can do that with all the creatures in the monster manual. Give them their kryptonite. You can put a plot-based kryptonite with any monster. And I highly encourage you to do so, because it really does engage that element of immersion in the story. And if the player characters care and they put due game time into this advantage, give it to them for sure. Even if it doesn't exist, write it in there, throw it in there for sure. So yeah, with like the Rakshasa, the idea of that good creatures wielding piercing magical weapons certainly plays into story and plot. I mean, it really makes you think about, well, is there a specific magical weapon that would really kill a Rakshasa dead on the spot? If, you know, it's stabbed in the heart by a small child with this particular dagger, will it just kill it outright? Perhaps it's really vulnerable to a unicorn's horn, for instance. I mean, it's a good creature with a piercing, and the whole thing is magical, isn't it? So, yeah, if you ride a unicorn right into a Rakshasa, would it instantly just cease to be? Would it explode? That being said, you can sort of partition magical and mundane attacks and weaknesses into the following categories. You've got creatures of a certain focus, like for instance, if they're creatures of darkness or the creatures of acid or fire or whatever, then simple energy attacks, so fire, cold, lightning, thunder, acid, necrotic, arcane, that sort of thing, those different energy types, those will be effective against them, and those are easy things to throw in there. It's like, yeah, it just happens to be not very fond of cold because it comes from the desert. I mean, that makes sense, doesn't it? Silvered weapons or adamantium weapons, for instance, I think it's the Zorn that's vulnerable to adamantine weapons, or magical weapons. Magical weapons tend to fit so a magical weapon fits all the different damage slots. So it's a what do you call it? A skeleton key of damage. So basically, the magical weapon, for whatever reason, whether it's extra sharp or whatever, that enchantment allows it to take the place of whatever specific thing that creature would be vulnerable to otherwise. Yeah, so it's catch-all. Everything's vulnerable to a magical weapon, so to speak. If you really wanted to throw your players into a loop, give them a creature which is invulnerable to magic. So magical weapons actually detract from the power of that particular mundane sword or spear or whatever it is that it's enchanted into. that would throw them for a loop like the old Nilbolg. Yeah, so that's pretty much it for me. Yeah, Rakshasa I think would be my favourite one for the 5th edition. But as I say, there isn't a lot of focus on weaknesses in 5th edition. It's mainly keeping the status quo, keeping power creep in check, making every creature have a utility even in the high level game or a low level game, and yeah, not so many quirks and things like that in 5th edition, which I don't know, might be a loss, but they might throw some stuff in later on as more supplements are released for this very excellent edition of the game. That's it from me, and I think that's our show for today. Thank you for watching, everybody, and for those who are watching during Brigade Con, thank you for all your donations to Child's Play charity. It is greatly appreciated, and yeah, thank you on behalf of all the kids who are receiving those wonderful toys and entertainment that you've provided to them. It's a great thing. And yeah, it's been a great joy working with Arthur and Locrius on our little Masters of Monsters show, and hopefully we will join you in BrigadeCon 2016 if we're still around, or maybe we might even combine our forces once again outside of BrigadeCon. I don't know. Yeah, thanks for watching, everybody. This is AJ of the Mighty Gluestick signing off.
Awesome. Awesome. I knew those guys would step up to the plate. Well, guys, I am really thankful I got to work with Locrius and AJ, and first of all, for AJ putting this whole thing together. I really thank you, man. This was an awesome opportunity. I hope you guys enjoyed the show. I hope you watched it all the way through. And if you're one of my followers or my friends or, you know, one of my fellow monster lovers on my channel, make sure you follow these guys. Locrius makes awesome animated monster videos, and AJ goes pretty in depth, as I do, with D&D creatures, and makes pretty awesome videos out there as well. So if you haven't yet, go check those channels out, go join them. And if you don't know me, well then stop by my channel. I make all sorts of monster videos and monster stuff. Anything monster, you'll find it on my channel. And if it's not there and you want it to be, just go ahead and request it. So I want to thank you guys again, the two of you, AJ and Locrius, for giving me this opportunity. It was a blast. It was certainly a blast. You guys have a great time at Brigade Con 2015. I hope to see you guys in 2016 with these two Monster Masters. Maybe some other developing Monster Masters out there. And I also look forward to making more videos like these with these two guys for all of you out there, all you monster lovers, all you gamers, sci-fi people, fantasy people, horror movie lovers that are getting attracted to these other sides of the realm as well. So thanks again for watching. You guys have a wonderful time at Brigade Con. Please stop by the channel, say hi, and make sure you check out these two guys and leave them some liking love. And until next time, have fun out there and stay safe. But keep it risky.
This was so much fun doing this Masters of Monsters with you guys. I agree with everything that Arthur said. I had an absolute blast. I think it's awesome that Earth technology has finally gotten to where 3 random dudes from random places throughout the universes can get together and put their own individual spin on what it is to have a monster. What is a monster? Who made a monster? You wanna know who made a monster? Go ask Arthur Kidawa at World of Monsters, because that dude goes in depth about mythological creatures, into legend, into superstitions and cryptozoology. It's so awesome. You gotta subscribe. And my man AJ Pickett, thank you for putting this together. Like Arthur said, this was amazing. It was so much fun. If you're not subscribed to AJ Pickett's channel, you have to go there. This dude is a font of amazing role-playing creativity. Let me tell you, I could cite a bunch of examples, but let me just say that this dude came up with a scientific explanation to why a Grail is able to defy gravity. That's a floating big tentacle big brain. Scientifically possible, thanks to AJ Pickett. If you're wondering who this weird-ass blue dude in the YouTube continuum is, my name is Locrius. I have a channel, Locrius Planetoid, where I do Dungeons & Dragons videos. I also play in the intergalactic alien rock and roll band Planetoid. You can check out my band at Planetoid Music on the YouTube. Until next time, AJ Pickett, Arthur Kidawa. My name is Locrius. This has been Masters of Monsters.